Hello, everybody. Welcome to the second episode of Living Room Fight Club. I've got Dale with me again today. We're going to brush over two topics today. It's going to be the Dana White slap incidents, and then we're going to brush on some steroid usage in MMA. So, Dave, let's talk about Dana White.
Right, so as I'm sure you guys have heard, the UFC boss Dana White slapped his wife on New Year's Eve. They were in Mexico, I think, for New Year's Eve.
Yeah, if I remember correctly,
yeah. Had a few drinks. From the research that I've done, they obviously they've had drinks, as you do on New Year's Eve, and things have happened. Things have slightly escalated. I've actually watched the video as well, and that's not a nice thing to see, really. But
it's not what you want to see from a leading organisation, is it?
Yeah, exactly. And like leading an organization that is sort of like involved with obviously being UFC, which is like the fight club essentially, isn't it? Like, Ultimate Fighting Champion. Like, you don't want to see that from the boss, and I know
absolutely not.
There have been like issues before, right? When there's some other fighters. I'm not sure who was it exactly, but there was a couple other fighters back in the day that they had some issues with regards to obviously, sort of abuse towards women and things like that. So yeah, pretty nasty situation, I think.
Absolutely. I think I know that Floyd Mayweather was one of the boxers that got involved in that sort of thing. It's a tough thing to see, with Dana White. He's been an advocate of saying fighters aren't animals, because a lot of people see the UFC and how they fight and they think it's barbaric. And Dana White through the years has been very much an advocate of, showing the normal people that fighters aren't animals, and then, to see that it's a kick in the teeth, really.
It is, yeah, and it's like him being the advocate of all that. Like he should, you fight in a cage, and then at home you should be like, enjoying the time with your family, not being absolutely crazy. I will say this, an asshole after a few drinks. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's not supposed to be like that. You shouldn't conduct yourself like that, right?
So, no, absolutely.
A bit of a statistic there for everyone who's listening, right? The video of him slapping the wife at a nightclub has been viewed over 1 million times now, man. That is crazy, right?
That is crazy. It doesn't take long for that sort of thing to spread round, does it? Especially when you're that high level of person.
Yeah, absolutely. And you'd be like, why do it? And what do you think sort of the repercussions of that would be, Scott? Like for him obviously doing that?
Look, it's a tough thing to say, because, if he gets suspended, then I'm not going to lie, that doesn't really affect him. He's got all the money in the world. The organisation will run regardless whether he's in it or not. You've got Hunter Campbell. He's the guy below, basically. The UFC will carry on as normal. So in terms for a suspension, that won't really do much. You can't really sack him. He kind of is the face of the UFC, essentially. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah, he is the UFC after all, isn't it? Like...
Yeah, so I think, a suspension it won't really do nothing. Fights would just carry on as normal, and we just wouldn't see him for a month or two. With that sort of thing, it's very much obviously a family issue. And I feel like him having to work that out with his kids and, his wife's family, that's going to be some challenge in its own. So, in terms of what they should do, I'm not really too sure. Maybe like a statement from both parties, not just Dana apologising, maybe the wife also.
Yeah, I suppose that could kind of clear, and then you can see the view from both sides, isn't it? Like, see his side of the story and then see her side of the story. But I think the biggest thing he will suffer with, he's going to be like living with this. You can pretty much say for the rest of his life, like, everyone was going to remember that incident, and everyone's going to be like, "Yeah, he's the woman here. Like, he's the one."
Yeah, that's it. That this sort of title does not go away ever, really. Do you know what I mean? It will stick around for forever, and that's something you got to carry around with. Well, something he's got to carry around with him, and that's a tough thing to do.
Yeah, it's a shame really because he's a really nice guy. Like, don't get me wrong. Obviously, he made UFC to what it is now, like an
Mhm.
incredible show. Everyone
Yeah.
knows about it. Everyone loves to watch it. It's always exciting. It's
Hmm.
amazing, right? For this now to happen, and it's like, just why, man?
Yeah.
Like, you could have just literally just held back. Like, don't do
Yeah.
it, because the
Hmm.
cameras are
Yeah.
everywhere, right? Wherever you
Everywhere.
go,
Like,
cameras are
especially when
exactly
you're
everywhere.
Dana White, they're everywhere, man.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like, why do it? Like, why cause so much
Yeah.
issues?
I think it's crazy that like an incident like that really does have effect on like you think, for example, that like situation, it probably lasted what, 10, 15 seconds.
Yeah.
That could shut down a business. You know what I mean? It's not going to shut down the UFC, but it can. Do you know what I mean? It has that
Yeah.
potential, that ability to, and I think that is crazy in its own aspect.
Mm. Yeah, I think this is going to have an effect on obviously on him. Like I said before,
Mhm.
he's going to be like named. He's going to be like tagged that like he's going to
Yeah.
be the woman hitter, and yeah, the
Mhm.
business might take a bit of a hit. People
Mhm.
might start looking into things a little bit differently, a bit more carefully. Like
Yeah.
yeah, it's definitely not going to be the same. I was actually going to read something that he commented on. So
Yeah.
about obviously him making a comment with the whole situation. So he was like, "What should obviously the repercussions be? You tell me. I take 30 days off.
Yeah.
How does that hurt me? Obviously, me leaving hurts the company, hurts my employees, hurts the fighters. It doesn't hurt me. Obviously, he could have left in 2016.
Mhm.
Do I need to reflect? No, I don't need to reflect. The next morning when I wake up, I own this. I'm telling you that I'm wrong." So he kind of
Yeah.
admitted to that, didn't he? Like he is wrong.
Yeah, and I think that is probably the best option for him, is to admit the wrongdoing, because you can deny stuff all you want and you can make excuses for why it happened, but the matter of the fact is, we saw it happen. We saw you get slapped and then you slap your wife back. Do you know what I mean? We've seen it. So I think the best thing to him do is that, and is own up to it essentially. And yeah, he is right. Like the UFC will carry on. It's almost a vacation for him if he gets suspended.
Yeah, vacation to which he will come back, but then still be labelled like,
Yeah.
yeah, a woman hitter. It's a bit frustrating, really. Like,
Mhm.
but yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens from that, right? Like, we'll see what develops, right? How obviously the whole organization is going to
Yeah.
um, like respond to it, like the fights with everything. Like, we'll see all that, won't we? Like.
Yeah, I'm wondering what the press conferences for the fights are going to be like leading up from now, because I know Dana White does press conferences as well as the fighters, and I feel like recently, now that it's still fresh, I feel like the media is going to be asking him about it all the time. So I don't know. I'm thinking he might avoid media for a while.
Yeah, there is. Again, I've just done a bit of research, like in the Guardian, right? They said,
Hmm.
is it time to consider a UFC without Dana White? So, like, do you see UFC continuing without him? Like, in your words, like in your opinion, do you think like no Dana White? Do you think UFC could still be what it currently is, or?
Yes, I do. I do believe. I think what Dana White. I think we'll miss Dana White. Let me get that straight off the bat. We will miss Dana White. The way he does business is very good for the fans. Um, he gets a bit of sorry. There's a bit of controversy with his fighter pay. So he doesn't do everything perfectly, but the way he runs the business is fantastic.
Yeah.
With that said, I think with the guy underneath him, Hunter Campbell, I think we will get all the good qualities we like in the UFC still there, but we won't have almost like the fun president. He's like the fun stepdad. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I think the UFC will still be there, but I think we'll notice him gone, and I think a lot of people will miss him, to be honest.
Yeah, like I said to you before, like he is like the face, right? He
Yeah,
he sets it all up. He makes it entertaining. Like he's essentially to what Eddie Hearn is for boxing, right? Like without,
yeah,
I don't think boxing would have had the same sort of kick, especially here in the UK, without like Eddie Hearn. Like that
yeah,
would sort of go away. It wouldn't be the same.
mhm,
You would sort of like miss him, right? And it'd be
yeah,
like, it's not the same, really. Do I still want to watch it, kind of thing? Some people
mhm.
might potentially go with that option, right?
Yeah, yeah. No, definitely, definitely. There's people that like I know people that will not watch the UFC without Dana White managing it and running the show. it's the way that he does things. Is and the thing is, because he's been there from the start, they get used to it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
They get used to the way the UFC is run currently, and not everybody likes change, especially when UFC is concerned. Anyway,
Yeah, it's absolutely mental. Just
it's going to be a tough one. This, like I say, the UFC will be able to survive, but it's I think you'll notice him gone. You will notice him.
Oh yeah, absolutely. The viewing of the whole UFC will drop. You could just see like the graph just going down. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know what they're going to do when that time comes. If it's now, I don't know, but when that time comes, it's going to be a tough one to climb. That one.
Yeah, no, definitely. I totally agree with you 100% with that. Yeah, it's going to be definitely a very tough mountain to climb with that. Absolutely.
Yeah, like I say, he's been there since the very start. So when you have someone like Dana White, who you can almost rely on to make the good fights you want to see. Not that he's the only matchmaker, but the good fights you want to see, and just like I say, the way he runs the business is very good. And I think you'll miss him.
Yeah, no, definitely. I've looked into this again. There has been a couple of like other fighters, like if you want to talk about a few, like Thiago Silva, he had a bit of an issue as well, like with allegations, obviously, in domestic violence and stuff.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like something new, right? Like I'm currently scrolling through this and I'm seeing like different UFC fighters, like even if it's like females as well in the UFC, they've been accused of like domestic violence. It's something that I think it needs to be addressed as well. What do you think?
Yeah, it's so tough because not normal people. Normal people can't be fighters. You need to have some sort of element in you that wants you to fight. But it kind of goes hand in hand with with violence. I hate to say it, but it kind of does.
Yeah, they need some sort of a switch, right? So you're in a cage, you perform to your best ability, you get off that cage, you are a different person, if you know what I mean. You have to balance that out, right? And it feels like some people can't do that. They just feel like, obviously, I'm on top of the world, I've done this, I can continue on doing this, and this is what, obviously, domestic violence happens, which is, quite scary in a way, but then, like, quite disgusting to see, like we're supposed to all respect each other, right? Like obviously women and men, the other way around, and it's just like you don't tend to see that in some of the cases.
No, that's it. And in Dana White's term, for example, like right or wrong, should he have slapped her, shouldn't she? Nobody should be slapping anybody. That's the final line. Do you know what I mean? So it's something needs to happen, but you can't let a few bad apples spoil the bunch. You know what I mean? That's where I come into play with my love for MMA. Is it's not all MMA fighters, but the bad apples, they definitely can leave a sour taste in your mouth.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, I think if there was going to be a little this disagreement between like Dana White and the wife, why not just like take it somewhere when the cameras are not rolling. If you know what I mean, the people are not
do that behind closed doors, don't you?
Yeah, he's a high sort of a VIP, right? Everyone knows him. Everywhere he goes, there's paparazzi everywhere.
Yeah.
Why not? Like he is carrying a lot on his shoulders right now. Yeah, with like obviously UFC and where is that and where it needs to go, like in 2023 as well, with all these fights coming up, right? So why not just think and not do it in front of all those cameras? Like, come on.
It's a crazy thing.
Yeah.
When you have Dana White all over the news, it's if someone's not a massive fan of MMA and they see that the president of the UFC is slapping his wife, that that tarnishes everybody who's ever fought for the UFC and or any other fighters ever, essentially.
Yeah, all those investors as well, because not being funny.
Not only the fighters and the fans, it's the investors too.
Yeah, I know. Obviously, UFC's got quite a bit of investment going on from a few different companies, and that might be some questions being asked as well. How come you can have the boss of UFC do such thing. Like
Yeah.
it's just going to tarnish everything. It's going to
Yeah.
cost them. Yeah, I think it's going to cost them
Yeah,
monetary.
definitely.
Yeah.
Is there any repercussions you'd like to see personally?
Um. Well, it would be nice, like you said, for him to make another formal statement. Obviously, with the wife.
Yeah.
Maybe then again, when you think about it, monetary is probably not going to work, isn't it? Because you can just pay it off and be done with it.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a difficult one, really, because he's the boss of UFC. What are you going to do? Like you said, obviously you're going to suspend him for a bit, and we're not
Yeah.
going to see him for 30 days. Like, what's
Mhm.
that going to change? That's not going to change nothing. People will be like, well, he's just been off. We had someone else
Yeah,
in.
exactly. I mean, we haven't had fights for 4 weeks now, so it'd be exactly the same thing. Haven't seen him for 30 days. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it will be just back to normal. So I think in that case, there isn't anything that could potentially be done. Maybe
Mhm.
legal action. Obviously, if the wife decides to, go for it or whatever, she feels like
Yeah.
obviously, she's been disrespected, to which she was.
Yeah,
She might
absolutely.
start. Yeah, she might start taking the legal action, which fair on her. Stand up for
Mhm.
those rights and
Yeah,
do what's right, kind of thing.
absolutely. Yeah, it's a tough one. Like I said, no one should ever hit anybody, regardless of the situation. Um, like I said, what I'd like to see is a statement from both parties. Let the fans know what's going on to an extent. You don't have to go into too much detail. That's personal, but just give the fans an idea of you're working things over with the family. That sort of thing.
Yeah, maybe go to like sort of a session of
Yeah,
like I don't know, I would say behavioral or something that's gonna like couples counseling or something rather to obviously
yeah,
you want to see some steps being taken in the right direction, isn't it? Because you don't want 6 months down the line
yeah,
be listening and seeing exactly the same thing, but him
yeah.
without a drink. You know what I mean? Like,
That's it. Yeah, you want to see some action from here. You don't, like you said, you don't want to sit out for 6 months and then you just don't hear anything of it. You want to see them steps to know that not for us essentially, but for the investors, they want to see some change to know for a fact that's never going to happen again. It was just a spur of the moment mistake. Both parties are in the wrong. Do you know what I mean? That's
yeah.
what I think should happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, with all that in mind, they need to have the trust back in Dana White that he's capable of obviously running the company and making the
Mhm.
right decisions, right? Because that's what the end of that. At the end, that's essentially what it is, isn't it? Like they need
Yeah,
to be reassured by his proper actions that this
yeah.
will never happen again, and we could
Mhm.
just move forward from that.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, he's had God knows how many times. UFC's been around for 30 years now. He's, you make little mistakes, but he's done all right to make it this long without a big one. But now
Yeah,
that this has happened, you want to see the right steps moving forward. You want to see him. He almost represents the UFC. If he is out there making change, you know that the UFC is a good organization. It isn't tarnished by him. Do you know what I mean?
yeah, no, 100%. I agree with you on that. Yeah. Right, Scott. So, slightly moving on, obviously, on the topic. The other
Mhm.
topic that we're going to discuss is obviously, do UFC fighters have to obviously, what are your thoughts, obviously, on them taking steroids and should they obviously take drug tests as well? Because that's,
Mm.
sort of all
Yeah.
in one, really. What are your thoughts on that?
I think there needs to be a balance. Okay, so like we brushed over on the first episode of McGregor. I believe he is um using some sort of performance enhancing steroids, using it for recovery. I think when the fighter is not fighting, he's a person first. He's got a family first. That
Yeah,
needs to be the most important thing at all times. In competition, you need to be testing. That's why the UFC has brought in USADA, which is like a testing pool, basically.
yep,
Um, I think that's fantastic what they do. They're a bit horrible to some fighters. Like I know Paulo Costa gets woken up at 5 in the morning often. He's very, very, very jacked. So they get their suspicions up, and I don't think it's very fair on the fighters sometimes. However, they do need regular testing when they're in competition.
Oh yeah, 100%. Like, I'm just going to read a little statement from obviously the from the whole anti Anti-Doping
Yeah.
Agency. So obviously the use of steroids and other performance-enhancing drugs, PEDs, is obviously prohibited in the UFC.
Yeah.
Fighters obviously are subject to testing by United States Anti-Doping Agency and can face penalties, including fines and suspensions, if they test positive for PEDs. The UFC has also its own anti-doping policy in place as well, which is good. But like you said, yes, they take things to extreme, I think, sometimes. But then again, you do not want to see a lot of fighters somehow miraculously, get bigger in a short period of time
Yeah.
and then be. It's going to sound bad, but it feels like obviously they're going to have an advantage over other fighters that obviously, for example, not taking it.
Of course.
Because with all that, it comes to things like, strength, like the punch power and things like that. Like obviously,
Yeah.
even like the recovery period with everything that they potentially are taking, it's a lot shorter, isn't it? So like, they punch a lot harder. And when it comes to like recovery and what they feel back, it's a lot less, which is obviously a benefit for them, right?
That's it. Yeah, absolutely. Like you say, it's not just how hard they can hit. It's that minute break in between rounds. They can get so much more recovery in than the other fighter can. It's like the fight almost resets for them.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's such a bad subject to think about. Is like some fighters using steroids against some fighters that aren't. And like I said before, fighter safety is the number one thing. It should be in every MMA organization.
Yeah, it's just like any other sport, right? Like you don't want to see, let's say, in basketball or like even football or whatever, like, people who are like the custodians of the sport, who are actually the athletes, right? The ones who are like fit, ready to rock and roll, take the advantage of this and like take some unnecessary steps, if you know what I mean. You don't want to see that kind of thing. Like, because again, it's distasteful, and B, why do that? Like, they're all supposed to compete with their own strength, with their own like, hard work and dedication to actually, deliver a great show potentially. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Like you have for an example, this fighter TJ Dillashaw. He fought at bantamweight and he moved down to flyweight, so he's cutting a lot of weight anyway, and he usually fights at 135 pounds.
Yeah,
flyweight is 125. So it's an extra 10 pounds he's got to cut, and he popped for EPO. So that was helping his recovery, and even still the fight didn't go his way, but the point is he was able to get his body down to such a point and be able to recover where he shouldn't have even been fighting in that division anyway. He wouldn't have been able to make the weight if it wasn't for this EPO.
Holy crap! So
it's putting other fighters at risk. For what reason? Just because you're worried you might not beat them using your own ability, essentially.
Yeah. Again, you can look at it from both sides. Like obviously you then said about the recovery stuff. It does help, which absolutely is fine with, right? You can do all that. We can see obviously with Conor McGregor as well. He's taken. You can see he clearly have taken some steps, right? Yeah,
of course. But the difference is with him is he's fixing an injury, whereas I think with Dillashaw he was using it to get down to the weight. If you get what I mean, then it's almost a grey area because, like I say, I think it's okay when they're injured, but not to get down weight, if that makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. And when they're like actively fighting and things like that, like if you know what I mean, like obviously the use of that, highly prohibited, whatever it takes, right? If you are competing and obviously you're resting between the fights or whatever the situation is, don't do it. Like, and there is an article about 20 UFC fighters who obviously been like caught using steroids, and they're quite like respectable names in the business as well, which is obviously again shame to see that they've obviously been caught using like performance enhancement like drugs and stuff like that to either help them with recovery or help them with fights and stuff. Like they slip through those lovely and anti-doping agency like hands really. It is. In my opinion, it should have happened. Like, it should not happen. Even like, and I'm going to be blatantly honest, like in terms of like the recovery, because I think like if you get a taste for it, you want it more.
Yeah.
Anything?
Yeah, no, that's fair. Like, I agree with that because if you use McGregor for example, because
Yeah,
of his injury, he started using. Well, that was it's all speculation. Anyway, McGregor, with spectacle that he's using it, he might feel so good now. He might feel so much better than he was because
yeah.
of this. Like you said, he might then get a taste for it and think, do you know what? There's something I might be able to do that might let me slip through the cracks of USADA.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great statement. To be fair, yeah, no, that's a fair point. It's a tough one to call, but you've almost got to put so much faith into USADA that they're going to catch him.
Yeah, even if like obviously you said about that fighter who's obviously got like 5 a.m. calls like pretty much essentially like on the
Yeah.
daily at his house or whatever. Like
Hmm.
even if they have to go to the extremes, like you have to keep some sort of a cap and like a hand on it all. Like again,
Yeah.
it can like go completely out of control. Like we've the topic that we've discussed with Dana White. If someone doesn't put control into it,
Hmm.
it will completely go. It will go mental, right? You don't
Yeah.
want the same thing to go with like fighters again. A lot of people are watching the sport, they're enjoying the sport,
Hmm.
and I think the whole sort of experience is based on people who are training really hard,
Yeah.
different martial skills like our form of arts of fights and things like that, and
Hmm.
then they want to see him compete, right? But then obviously they don't want to see him, oh, he's taking steroids, he's a lot better or whatever, or
That's
he
it.
cheated kind of thing, if you know what I mean. There's again that from the
Yeah.
business side of things. You do not
Hmm.
want to see the things like that.
Now you want that fair competition, don't you? You want to
Yeah.
see, what the thing is, what you're watching in MMA, for example, you're watching a multitude of martial arts go up against each other. So you want to see a really good kickboxer versus a really good Muay Thai fighter, a really good wrestler versus a really good Jiu-Jitsu fighter. You don't want any other factors involved because that takes away from what you're watching. You are watching, a spectacle. You're watching two martial arts against each other. And when you start throwing things like steroids in there, it's not a fair test.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. That's how it should be based on. Like it's
Mhm.
supposed to be fair and square for every single one,
Yeah.
and anyone that's been caught with like using drugs should be oh, punished in a way. Like obviously
Yeah.
there are lengthy suspensions, right? So obviously I'm reading it now. So if they do a drug test and then if a UFC fighter refuses a test or flees on the scene, right? This is how severe it is. They
Yeah.
receive a lengthy suspension, right?
Hmm.
However, the anti-doping agency notifies the fighter they have been selected for testing.
Yeah.
Fighters have obviously the right to delay it
Hmm.
if under valid reason. Yeah, I get that, but
Hmm.
then why would you want to notify a fighter? The key is to catch them out, not obviously give him a reason to use some sort of a substance that will try to get the drugs out of him. Because there are substances. Come on, we're like in 2023 now. If
Yeah.
you want something out of your system, I'm sure there is, either a
Yeah.
tablet or a liquid that you can take that obviously will help you get rid of it. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I definitely would have thought so.
Like, obviously, many UFC fighters, it says on here, like, they obviously still use steroids to enhance their, obviously, like you said, fighting performance, even
Yeah.
like though it is illegal in the sport. Yeah. Obviously, it's not easy to determine if a fighter is using them, but they might not obviously receive penalties when caught. Like other professional athletes, to what I said, in various sports, obviously. UFC fighters survive based on the athletic performance. To what you said, obviously, you want to see them how hard they've trained, right? How hard
That's
they've
it.
actually put the time in to
Hmm.
look the way they look, to showcase their skills, right? Like it's all
Yeah.
about that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely. That's like I said, you don't want anything to like, oh, what's the word, to like infect what you're watching. You just want to watch the purest form of martial arts against each other. When you start adding things like steroids in there, it could turn one fighter into a completely different animal.
yeah, 100%. So with the testosterone, obviously like use and things like that, like TRT, right? It's
Hmm.
legal. Like I've just read about it. Like using that obviously to help build strength in the muscle. Obviously it's not the same as steroid abuse apparently. So TRT is actually legal. What are your thoughts on that? Like.
Is it legal in as in like normal day life? Because I don't think it's legal in the UFC if I remember correctly.
So I think what this is actually when they're not fully fighting, not with it. I think when they're sort
Yeah.
of like recovery. So I think similar to obviously what Mr. McGregor is currently now doing.
Yeah.
So
So with TRT, it's like I said about it depends when if you're in competition, if you're out of competition. If you know for a fact you're not going to be fighting for 8-9 months time, I think you should be allowed to do essentially whatever the hell you want. But I do also think they should have a testing period where when you're coming back to fight, you need to test clean for a period of time before you start your training camp, for example.
Oh yeah, 100%, 100%. I agree with you. Like they need to have that window when it's like, right, well, you fully recovered. Let's see now, sort of your normal day to day, and let's
Yeah.
test you like every now and then. Don't announce it, and then just be like, right, okay, yeah, you clean, you ready to go. If you know what I mean, that kind of thing. I'll probably be the best way.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I don't like, like every now and then a 5 a.m. call is okay because you do have to catch these fighters because, like you said, 2023 there is probably something that they can do to sort themselves out. But I also think you do need to also respect the fighters' time and their training because they are athletes at the end of the day. They're not going to want to get woken up to inject a needle at God knows what time in the morning when they've got to get up in an hour's time for training.
Yeah,
it's you've got to find that balance, really.
Yeah. I've actually found something really interesting, right? So, a UFC heavyweight fighter, Carlos Felipe. Yeah, you know who I mean?
Rings a bell. It rings a bell.
So, he's been, suspended for 18 months due to a positive drug test for steroid. Right?
Okay. Yeah.
So, what happens, obviously? So, he tested positive for anabolic agent, right? And on, what does it say? It says that he is allowed, right? So get this. So the suspension is very, very lengthy, right? So he's not able to return until April of 2023, right?
Right.
And he also has been fined 15% of what he was making.
Jesus.
I know. When you think about it, it's like, shit, if you get caught, it's going to cost you a little bit.
My word, that is savagery.
Yeah, so 18 months, right? So 18 months ban is quite a bit of, like, a lengthy period of time, don't you think? Like, for a fighter.
That's literally what I was about to say. Yeah, for a fighter, that is, a year is a long time for a fighter.
Yeah. And it's like 18 months, so you get caught, you share like, oh shit, you don't use it, then try to keep up with the physique that you've had, keep up with like the routine that you've had for 18 months until then obviously be like, oh yeah, in April 23, mate, absolutely fine, you can come back and fight. It's going to be a shock, and B, it's going to be like, am I okay to come back? Like, you see what I mean? Like, it's going to be a bit of a weird one for him, to be fair.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I think, it depends how old a gentleman is already. That 18 months could make or break a career, essentially. If that's somebody who's getting on a little bit, you're taking away a lot of money for him,
Yeah.
And like I say, if you're getting on a bit, you can almost take away a fighter's prime.
Exactly. If you got hit with it at the wrong time, your career might be over. And you are 100% right, because you're just going to go past your prime for the 18 months that you could have possibly had the best career of your life.
Absolutely.
You messed it up, right?
Yeah.
And the funny thing is with that guy in particular, this is his second run-in with doping issues.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, so his UFC debut was delayed by a 2-year suspension from the doping agency, right? Doping, anti-partner after testing positive for a steroid, stanozol. Like, wow.
I've heard of it. Bloody 2-year delay.
Imagine that. That's just career gone then, isn't it? Why coming back? What's the point?
Yeah, you might as well go then, to be honest. 2 years. My word, that is savage.
So listen to this one. This is the kicker. This is the final nail in the coffin, I think. If he ever tests positive again, the doping agency, they would penalise him with a 4-year suspension. Imagine that, 3 strikes and 4 years. You might as well just hang the gloves up and be like, right, I might as well just work in a supermarket somewhere and help old ladies.
Absolutely, yeah. At that point, you might as well just drop everything, There's a fighter, Nick Diaz. You've probably heard the name.
Yeah.
Well, Nate Diaz's brother. Years and years ago, he tested positive. So at one point, you couldn't even test positive for marijuana. They don't care about that anymore because they realised it's not a performance enhancer. by any
Yeah.
means. But at one point in time, it was illegal, and the Diaz brothers are very much known for smoking that.
Hmm.
And yeah, he got banned for 4 years for it.
Wow,
Yeah,
that is
and there's
incredible. He also has been fined, if I remember correctly, $160,000 or something with that.
he got a hefty fine. And
Bloody.
what I find crazy is how far the sport has come to think he tested positive for marijuana and got 4 years, and then you get fighters now, for example, like Felipe, who test
Yeah.
positive for actual performance enhancing drugs and get a lesser, a lesser sentence.
Hmm. I think they need to sort the fairness out and things like that. If you know what I mean.
Yeah,
What is the wrong sort of drug? Yeah, punish like those people more or
yeah,
more hefty, right? For something
hmm
like that. Well, obviously, when you said about Nick Diaz, yeah, again, he messed up. Don't get me wrong. Like he
yeah,
shouldn't have done it, maybe or whatever.
hmm
But I think the punishment shouldn't be like $165,000 and like 4 or 5 years like suspended, like right. That again, 5 years is a pretty long time, right? The dude is
yeah,
now what 39.
yeah. They took his career away. In that aspect, I truly believe they took Nick Diaz's prime away from him. 4
Jesus.
years for that, and like I said, you can get fighters now, like TJ Dillashaw, for example. Like I said
Yeah.
earlier, he tested positive for EPO and he got 2 years.
That's just ridiculous. Like their punishment are just completely flipped on how they supposed to
Yeah,
fine people like them.
yeah,
Like it's crazy, absolutely
it,
mental.
it's baffling, isn't it? It's baffling, And the problem is with performance enhancers is you can injure a fighter
Yeah.
so badly. Fights are
Hmm.
dangerous anyway, let alone when you've got, a roided up guy in there. Like Michael Bisping, for example, he had half of his career without an eye because Vitor Belfort was juiced to the gills on TRT and landed a spinning back kick and it literally has messed up Michael Bisping's eye so much. He's got zero vision in it. He won his title with one eye. Granted, it was lucky not lucky, but he won the title. But what I'm
Yeah.
saying is, Michael Bisping's life, he now has to go on with one eye because of somebody trying to cheat.
Yeah, for the rest of his life. So the rest of his normal, peaceful life, the dude
Yeah,
is now going to be one-eyed, like not
yeah,
be able to fully see the world
hmm
just because of such a stupid mistake. That's something that was allowed and not prevented in the first place, right? That
yeah,
is crazy.
yeah, absolutely. Like I say, they just did not. The USADA wasn't about then, so I believe it was in Brazil, and they don't really test in Brazil that what they might do now, but at the time they weren't really testing in Brazil.
Yeah.
And yeah, like you say, he's got a family. He's had to watch his kids grow up with one eye. I know it sounds a bit silly, but it's true.
Hmm.
That poor
And
man has got one eye now, and
yeah,
he's
life over. Technically, not being funny, mate. He's not going to be able to enjoy it to the fullest, right? Like,
yeah. That will be like a nightmare for. Like I remember him saying on a podcast of his when he's on planes and stuff. Like it causes him a lot of trouble when he's looking around and it's pinging.
yeah.
Like it feels like it's pinging.
Mm.
It's and all that when he was in there clean, he was fighting clean, but this guy was dirty, and I almost think there should be a bit of compensation in that. There might be. I don't know what's gone on behind the scenes, but for future reference, if a fighter's gone in there on steroids and that got and is found out, that guy should get compensation.
Oh yeah, totally agree with you, 100%. Yeah, cause it affects him a whole like the rest of his life. Like I said, like
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that needs to be taken a lot more seriously, which it is now. But I think there is still things they can improve on. Like
Yeah,
yeah, they can make things a lot better. But
yeah.
just going back to Diaz, right? Guess when was his last fight? You'll probably know. When was the last time he stepped into the octagon?
His last time, what
Yeah.
year? It must have been either 2021 because he fought Robbie Lawler.
Yeah, so he's I think his last fight was actually with Silva, UFC 183, and he lost it.
Okay, yes, yeah. So he's came back since then and fought Robbie Lawler, but
Okay.
that was after his suspension.
All right.
But yeah, that was it was a long time ago. His career, and like I say, that fight with Silva was extremely close, and then to take his prime away, those 4 years, then
Yeah.
it's insane.
Yeah, it's the world we live in, but hopefully, like I said, they'll make things better for every single fighter. That make it more fairer,
Yeah,
and then we will be able to enjoy this amazing sport
yeah,
spectacle in this year. And again with Dana White, hope everything gets sorted. And
yeah,
then we'll be able to obviously see him in press
hmm,
conferences, everything
yeah,
all well, and then have some amazing fights ahead.
yeah. Hopefully, mate. Hopefully, I think 2023 can be a massive, massive year for the UFC if they play their cards right.
100%. Bring McGregor back. We want him back.
Absolutely, absolutely. Put him in there with Chandler. Put him in there.
Yeah, 100%. I'm with that.
Right. Fantastic, mate. It's been a pleasure talking with you.
It's been amazing. Thanks for having me again.
My pleasure, my pleasure. Always welcome. Right. I'll see you on the next one.
See you later, guys. Take
Goodbye,
care.
all. Goodbye, all.